For the last 10 chapters, it's like Jesus has been on the way to Jerusalem. This is the way the Gospel of Luke runs. After all this time, Luke 19 to 20, Jesus finally arrives at the place that he had set his face toward, the place he's been heading to for all these chapters. And when he gets there, though he said all of these bad things are going to happen, when he gets there, the people begin to praise him. Blessed is the King who comes in the name of the Lord. The Pharisees, right in line with their character, tell him to stop his disciples from saying this kind of thing. Jesus responds, Luke 19, verse 40, I tell you, if these were silent, the very stones would cry out. When he gets there, he enters into the temple. He sees a place of sin. The house that was supposed to be a house of prayer for all the nations has become a hideout for robbers. So he goes in full of zeal, and he drives out those who are abusing the worship of Yahweh, those who are making it hard for anyone to be able to come and to come to know Yahweh and to worship him. The leaders of the Jews, Jesus' own people, hate him all the more. Luke 19:47, and he was teaching daily in the temple, and the chief priests and the scribes and the principal men of the people were seeking to destroy him. The stage has been set. Jesus set his face toward Jerusalem long ago, and now he is there. Jesus went there to die. The leaders of the Jews despise him. They want to kill him. They want to murder the one God has sent to save them. They want nothing to do with the one that God has sent to rescue them. We can hear perhaps the accounts of Moses trying to help his people. They reject him. Say, who made you a ruler and a judge over us? Perhaps we can hear sounds of Joseph being raised up to rescue his brothers, but his own brothers hate him all the more. They try to destroy the one that God raised up to save them. Luke chapter 22, verse 2. The chief priests and the scribes were seeking how to put him to death, for they feared the people. But while we're thinking about the opposition of the leadership, all of the human elements joining together to try to get rid of Jesus, we are then confronted with something entirely unexpected. Luke 22, verse 3. Then Satan entered into Judas, called Iscariot, who was of the number of the 12. Judas went away and conferred with the chief priests and officers how he might betray him to them. And they were glad and agreed to give him money. So while we're looking and being drawn to the opposition on the outside, one of Jesus' own followers, one of his closest friends, goes to the Jewish leaders and offers to betray Jesus. This is one of the 12 men whom Jesus had loved and invested his life in. One of the 12 who had seen what Jesus had done and had even participated in the ministry. And now as things are building towards their climax, Judas stabs Jesus in the back. How do you think Jesus would have felt having such a close friend turn out to be a traitor? This kind of thing had happened to the great King David. He sang about it often in the Psalms, and it's now happening to the one greater than David. But there is far more to what Luke is saying than just an act of human betrayal. Judas does this, Luke says, after Satan entered into him. What is happening now is not just a human attack. The serpent is on the move. If you remember back to how Luke began Jesus' life record, he started with Jesus' baptism, a genealogy then that goes back to Adam, the Son of God. And Jesus then goes out into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil, by the serpent. And Jesus wins out there in the wilderness, now in Jerusalem, as the hatred for Jesus of Nazareth is growing. It's maybe 3 years or so later. Satan is back on the move, and he has entered into one of Jesus' own followers, helping to further the plot to destroy the Son. The serpent is going to try to crush the offspring of the woman. The conflict has been raging since Genesis 3. and it's heading towards its climax. Satan sees a chance to crush the offspring's head, and he's seizing the opportunity. When is all this happening? Luke has already informed us at the beginning of the chapter, in Luke 22, verse 1, that this is happening during the time of the Passover. As you read on, Jesus wants his followers to prepare to celebrate the Passover together, because it is Passover week. This time, of course, will be the time to remember the lamb that was slain, the blood that was shed, so that the people of Israel could be redeemed or freed from Egypt. God's people would do this year after year, reenacting these things, being reminded of these things, of that first day when God delivered his people out of Egypt through the blood of the Lamb. They would always do this, to remember the Lamb, to remember the blood, to remember the mercy of God and the justice of God. But when they get to the meal, Jesus opens his mouth and he begins to speak. Luke 22, verse 15, and he said to them, I have earnestly desired to eat this Passover with you before I suffer. Jesus then takes the bread that they have at the meal, and he broke it and he gave it to them. But when he gives it to them, he doesn't tell them to remember the Passover lamb in Exodus. He tells them something far different. He doesn't point them back. He points them ahead. Luke 22, verse 19. And he took bread, and when he had given thanks, he broke it and gave it to them, saying, This is my body, which is given for you. Do this in remembrance of me. Likewise, the cup after they had eaten, he says, and this cup that is poured out for you is the new covenant in my blood. The time of Passover has come. The time to remember the lamb that was killed to spare the sons of Israel is here. But when they eat and when they drink, Jesus tells them to think of something different. This bread is to bring to mind my body, he says, which is given for you. And this cup is to bring to mind my blood, which is about to be poured out, so that the new covenant can happen. That covenant by which people can get a new heart, and by which all their sins can be taken away. He takes the elements of the old, and he says all those things now are pointing to me. And you guys are to do this to remember me. He tells them this before these things even happen. He says, I wanted to have this meal so that you would put your attention on me, on my body and my blood, and so that you would do this from this time forth, not to remember back to what happened in Egypt, but to remember what I will do in Jerusalem.